Arnold Schwarzenegger didn't train the way you think. And if you're copying most Arnold workouts you see online right now, you're actually doing the exact opposite of what made him great. Arnold didn't become Arnold because of a routine. He became Arnold because of a philosophy, a way of thinking, a set of rules almost no one talks about anymore. Most lifters today train harder than ever, but somehow look worse than the generation before them. More information, more programs, more science, less results. And that's exactly why Arnold still matters. Not because he lifted heavy, not because he trained twice a day, and not because of genetics. Arnold mattered because he understood something most people in the gym still don't. Training is not about moving weight. It's about building something on purpose. Arnold never walked into the gym wondering what he was going to do. Every workout had a goal. Every exercise had a reason. Every set had a job. He wasn't just training muscles, he was training outcomes. When Arnold trained chest, he wasn't thinking about reps. He wasn't thinking about numbers. He was thinking about building a chest so big it would change the way his body looked from every angle. He visualized it stretching his ribcage, expanding his frame, creating an image no one could ignore. That's why Arnold said something most people skip right past. The mind is the limit. To him, that wasn't motivation. It was instruction. Arnold believed that if you couldn't see the muscle working in your mind, you couldn't force it to grow in reality. And this is where most lifters go wrong. They train on autopilot, same exercises, same weights, same distractions. They chase fatigue. Arnold chased intention. He didn't ask, how much can I lift today? He asked, what am I building with this set? That mindset changes everything. Because once you train with intention, random workouts stop making sense. Jumping from program to program stops making sense. And copying someone else's routine without understanding the reason behind it becomes pointless. Arnold wasn't collecting workouts, he was mastering principles. And the first core rule of his philosophy is simple. Never train without a clear purpose. If you don't know exactly what you're trying to build in a set, you're just moving weight. And moving weight alone never built a legendary physique. This is also why Arnold didn't care about doing what everyone else was doing. He trained differently because he was aiming for something different. And this brings us to the most misunderstood part of Arnold's training. The thing people joke about, the thing people dismiss, but the thing that gave him total control over his physique, the mind-muscle connection. And once you understand how Arnold actually used it, you'll realize why most people today are training the right exercises, the completely wrong way. Most people hear the phrase mind-muscle connection and immediately stop taking it seriously. They think it's just gym talk, a feeling, a vibe, something you say when the weight is too light. Arnold thought the opposite. To him, the mind-muscle connection was not a suggestion. It was a weapon. And this is where his training separated him from everyone else in the room. Arnold didn't train muscles. He trained control. When he picked up a weight, his first question wasn't, how heavy is this? It was, can I make the muscle do exactly what I want? If the answer was no, the weight was too heavy. That alone should make you rethink the way you train. Because most lifters today choose weights they can survive, not weights they can command. Arnold believed that growth didn't come from moving the most iron. It came from placing the most tension on the exact muscle you were trying to build. That's why his reps looked different, slower, smoother, more deliberate. Every inch of the movement mattered. He wasn't just lifting the weight up, he was squeezing it, stretching it, fighting it, and he was doing it on purpose. Arnold once said that when he trained biceps, he imagined them growing larger with every rep. Not figuratively, literally. He pictured the muscle filling his sleeve, changing the shape of his arm, forcing the body to adapt. And while people today argue about science versus old school training, modern research actually confirmed what Arnold already knew. Muscle activation matters, time under tension matters, and your ability to consciously contract a muscle directly affects how much stimulus it receives. Arnold didn't need EMG machines to know that. He felt it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't feel the muscle they're training. They feel momentum. They feel joints. They feel exhaustion. But they don't feel control. That's why you'll see someone bench pressing for years with a chest that never really changes, or curling heavy weights with arms that look the same season after season. They're doing the movement, but Arnold was doing the muscle. This is also why Arnold wasn't impressed by numbers alone. A heavier lift didn't automatically mean a better lift. If the tension shifted away from the target muscle, the set was a failure in his mind. And this explains something most people miss. Arnold didn't chase personal records, he chased perfect reps. Reps where the muscle did the work from the first inch to the last. And that requires something most modern lifters avoid: patience. You have to slow down. You have to lower the ego. You have to accept less weight in exchange for more control. Arnold was willing to do that because he understood a simple rule. The muscle doesn't know how much weight is on the bar. It only knows tension. And once you understand that, everything changes. Your warm-up sets stop being useless. Your lighter sets stop feeling like a waste of time. And your heavy sets suddenly become more effective. Because now every rep has intention behind it. Arnold didn't leave growth to chance. He engineered it. And this mindset didn't just make his physique better. It made him unbeatable in the gym. Because while others were just trying to survive the workout, Arnold was shaping his body rep by rep. And once you train like that, working out stops being random. It becomes deliberate, controlled, almost surgical. But there's another side to this philosophy that most people never talk about. Because training with this level of focus changes the way you see the gym entirely. It stops being a place to burn calories. It becomes a battlefield. And that's where Arnold's competitive mindset took over. Arnold never trained like it was just another workout. Every time he walked into the gym, he believed he was walking into a competition, not on stage, not under the lights, but right there between the weights. Arnold didn't need an audience to compete. He created one in his head. When other bodybuilders trained around him, Arnold didn't ignore them. He studied them. He watched how they moved, how they struggled, where they quit. And then he made sure to do one more rep, one more set, one more perfect contraction, not to impress them, but to break them. Arnold understood something most people never realize. Your body gives up long after your mind does. And if you train alone, with no sense of pressure, you'll quit early every time. That's why Arnold turned every workout into a mental battle. He treated the gym like rehearsal for the stage. If he could dominate the workout, the competition would take care of itself. And this mindset changed how he trained. Rest times weren't casual, they were strategic, just enough to recover, never enough to relax. Because relaxing meant losing momentum. Arnold believed momentum was everything. Once the workout started, it didn't stop. He stayed locked in, focused, aggressive, even between sets. And this is where most modern lifters lose intensity. They scroll, they talk, they disconnect. Arnold stayed present. He used training partners not for comfort, but for pressure. A partner wasn't there to make things easier. They were there to make quitting uncomfortable. Arnold wanted someone watching, because being watched forced him to give more. This is why he loved training with people stronger than him. It gave him a target, a reason to push beyond comfort. And when he trained alone, he didn't let himself off the hook. He imagined the competition watching, judging, waiting for weakness, and he refused to give it to them. Arnold also understood that intensity doesn't come from chaos. It comes from commitment. He didn't scream randomly. He didn't throw weights around. His intensity was controlled, directed. Every rep had purpose. Every set had intent, because wasting energy meant losing focus. Arnold didn't train to feel tired. He trained to feel dominant, and that's a massive difference. Anyone can exhaust themselves. Very few people can apply pressure consistently for hours. That's what made Arnold dangerous. He didn't just outwork his competitors, he outlasted them. And over time, that kind of training creates something deeper than muscle. It builds confidence, unshakable confidence. Because when you know you've pushed harder than everyone else, self-doubt disappears. Arnold walked onto the stage already convinced he had won, not because he hoped, but because he had proven it to himself every single day in the gym. And this competitive mindset is exactly why Arnold could handle training volumes that would break most people. He didn't see long workouts as punishment. He saw them as advantage. The longer the session went, the more people dropped off, and Arnold stayed. But here's the important part. Arnold didn't start this way. He earned it. Years of base building, years of discipline, years of learning his limits, which is why copying his volume without his mindset is a mistake. High volume wasn't the cause of his success. It was the result of his adaptation. And this is where most people get it wrong. They copy the workload without earning the capacity. Arnold trained like a competitor because he had trained like a student first. And that leads us to the most dangerous misunderstanding of Arnold's training, the belief that more is always better. Because in reality, Arnold knew exactly when more was earned and when it was reckless. And once you understand that distinction, you'll stop trying to train like Arnold and start training the way Arnold actually did. Arnold was famous for high-volume training, long workouts, endless sets, hours in the gym. And this is where most people make their biggest mistake. They assume the volume came first. It didn't. The capacity came first. Arnold didn't wake up one day and decide to train for hours. He built toward it, slowly, deliberately, over years. High volume was not the secret. It was the consequence. Arnold understood something critical. Your body adapts to what you repeatedly demand from it. And if you demand too much too soon, it doesn't adapt. It breaks. That's why copying Arnold's workouts without copying his preparation is a guaranteed way to stall or get injured. Arnold had earned the right to train the way he did. He slept. He ate. He structured his life around recovery. Training was not something he squeezed into his day. It was the center of it. That context matters, because most people today try to train like a professional while living like an amateur. They want elite results on a casual schedule. Arnold never did that. When his training volume increased, everything else adjusted with it. More food, more rest, more focus. He listened to his body not to train less, but to train smarter. Arnold also rotated intensity. Not every set was maximal. Not every workout was brutal. Some sessions were about volume, others were about precision. This allowed him to train frequently without burning out. And this is something most people misunderstand. High volume does not mean high intensity all the time. Arnold saved true intensity for the sets that mattered most. That's why he could train twice a day and still make progress. He wasn't reckless, he was calculated. Arnold knew the difference between productive pain and pointless fatigue. If a set stopped serving the goal of the muscle, he ended it. No ego reps, no wasted effort. And this is why his recovery kept up with his workload. He wasn't chasing exhaustion, he was chasing adaptation. Arnold also understood that recovery was not passive, it was active. Stretching, posing, light movement. These weren't extras, they were part of the system. Posing wasn't just for the stage. It reinforced mind-muscle control. It increased blood flow. It improved muscle awareness. Everything connected. And that's the real lesson here. Arnold didn't train hard in isolation. He trained intelligently as a system. Volume, intensity, recovery, and focus all work together. Remove one piece and the system collapses. That's why most people who copy his volume burn out. They take the workload but ignore the structure. Arnold never made that mistake. And here's the rule. You need to remember, if your recovery doesn't match your training is too much. Not heroic, not disciplined, too much. Arnold respected that balance, and because of that, he could train longer, harder, and more consistently than anyone else. But there was another rule even more important than volume. A rule so simple most people overlook it completely. Arnold didn't chase variety, he chased mastery, and that rule might be the most powerful one of all. Arnold didn't believe in constant variety. In fact, he believed the opposite. While most people today jump from program to program, Arnold stayed. Same gym, same exercises, same structure. Not because he lacked options, but because he understood something deeper. Progress doesn't come from novelty. It comes from mastery. Arnold didn't search for new movements. He searched for better execution. He believed that the longer you stay with an exercise, the more it gives back. More control, more awareness, more growth. That's why his training looked repetitive to outsiders. Bench presses, squats, rows, curls, again and again and again. But repetition wasn't boredom, it was refinement. Arnold treated each exercise like a skill, something to be learned, something to be perfected. He knew that if he changed exercises too often, he'd stay a beginner forever. And this is one of the biggest problems in modern fitness. People confuse being busy with being effective. New workouts feel productive. New programs feel exciting, but excitement fades, mastery compounds. Arnold understood compound effort. He knew that small improvements repeated for years create impossible results. That's why he tracked progress obsessively, not just weight on the bar, but how the muscle felt, how the pump improved, how control increased. He paid attention. Arnold also understood consistency psychologically. Doing the same movements builds confidence. You know what's coming. You know what's expected. There's no anxiety, just execution. And execution builds momentum. Momentum builds belief. Belief builds dominance. This is why Arnold never needed motivation. Routine removed decision-making. The work was already decided. He just showed up and executed. And here's the part most people miss. Arnold didn't avoid variety forever. He earned it. Once he mastered an exercise, he could adjust it. Angles, tempo, grip. But the foundation stayed the same. This is completely different from random change. It's evolution, not chaos. Arnold believed that muscles respond best to consistent stress, applied intelligently. Change too often and the body never adapts. Stay long enough and it has no choice but to grow. That's why Arnold could spot weaknesses others never noticed. Because he knew his body intimately. He knew when something was off. He knew when something was improving. You only develop that awareness through repetition. Consistency also protected Arnold from injury because mastered movements are safer movements. Better form, better control, better joint alignment. Most injuries don't come from heavy weights. They come from unfamiliar patterns under load. Arnold minimized that risk by mastering the basics. And this rule applies far beyond bodybuilding. Consistency builds trust with your body, with your mind. When you show up daily, even on low energy days, you remove excuses. Arnold didn't wait to feel ready. He trained because training was who he was. And that identity mattered. He wasn't trying to be a bodybuilder. He was one. That mindset changes everything. When training becomes part of your identity, skipping feels unnatural. And this is why Arnold's results lasted. Years of the same principles applied relentlessly. Most people quit right before mastery begins. Arnold stayed. And because he stayed, the basics turned into weapons. But there was still one more rule, a rule that pushed Arnold beyond discipline, beyond consistency, a rule that required something most people avoid at all costs: suffering, and understanding the difference between productive pain and pointless damage. And that rule is where Arnold's philosophy becomes uncomfortable. Arnold never avoided pain, but he also never chased it blindly. He understood something most people confuse. Pain is not the enemy. Lack of purpose is. Arnold believed that discomfort was the price of growth. If a workout felt easy, it wasn't doing its job. But there was a clear line he never crossed, the line between productive suffering and pointless damage. Arnold respected that line. He pushed hard, but he listened closely. Burning muscles were acceptable. Loss of control was not. He knew that growth lived in the uncomfortable zone, the space where the muscle is screaming but the form is still clean. That's where adaptation happens. Most people quit right there, not because they can't continue physically, but because they've never trained their mind to stay. Arnold trained that skill daily. He taught himself to stay calm inside discomfort, to breathe through it, to control the rep even when everything wanted to rush. That mental control was part of his advantage, because when others panicked under pain, Arnold stayed present, and presence changes performance. Arnold also understood delayed gratification. He didn't expect every workout to feel amazing. Some sessions were heavy, some were flat, some were brutally uncomfortable. He showed up anyway, because progress doesn't happen when conditions are perfect. It happens when they're difficult. This is where Arnold separated training from entertainment. Training wasn't there to make him feel good. It was there to make him better. That mindset alone filters out most people. Arnold also respected injury. He didn't romanticize it. He knew an injured athlete is an athlete who can't train, and you can't outwork time away from the gym. So while he embraced pain, he avoided recklessness. He warmed up. He focused on technique. He stopped sets when form collapsed. Not because he was weak, but because he was thinking long-term. Arnold played the long game. And that's the difference. Most people train for today's pump. Arnold trained for tomorrow's physique. And the year after that, and the decade after that. He understood that progress is cumulative. One bad decision can erase months of work. One smart decision repeated daily builds momentum that's unstoppable. Arnold also used pain as feedback, not as a signal to quit, but as information. Where am I weak? Where am I losing control? Where do I need to improve? Pain became data, and data made his training smarter. This is why Arnold could push himself to extremes without breaking down. He wasn't ignoring signals, he was interpreting them. And that ability takes patience, it takes honesty, it takes humility. Arnold had all three. And this is the rule most people resist. You must be willing to suffer without being reckless, to be uncomfortable without being careless, to push without destroying the system. Once you understand that balance, training becomes sustainable, not for weeks, not for months, but for years. And that's when results become inevitable. But there was one final rule. The rule that ties everything together. The rule that explains why Arnold didn't just build a physique, he built a legacy. And that rule has nothing to do with weights at all. Arnold didn't train just to build muscle. Muscle was never the final goal. It was the proof. The proof that his vision was real. Arnold always trained with a future version of himself in mind. Not the man he was that day, but the man he was becoming. Every rep was a vote for the person he wanted to be. And this is the rule almost no one talks about. Arnold trained with identity. He didn't ask, "Do I feel motivated today?" He asked, "What would the champion do right now?" Training wasn't something he did. It was who he was. That's why discipline came naturally. That's why consistency wasn't a struggle. When something becomes your identity, skipping feels wrong. Arnold didn't need external validation. He validated himself in the gym, day after day, set after set. And here's the part that surprises most people. Arnold didn't believe in copying champions. He believed in becoming one. If Arnold trained today, he wouldn't follow an Arnold program. He would study the environment, study the competition, study himself, and then build a system that gave him an advantage. That's what made him dangerous, not the weights, not the volume, not the genetics, his seriousness. Arnold took his dreams seriously long before anyone else did, and because of that, the world eventually had no choice but to take him seriously too. This is why his philosophy still works, not because the exercises are special, but because the mindset is timeless. You don't need Arnold's workout. You need Arnold's standards. Train with intention. Train with control. Train with consistency. Train with courage. And most importantly, train like the person you want to become is already watching. Because here's the truth. The moment you stop chasing routines and start building identity, everything changes. And that's Arnold's real training philosophy.